Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on YouTube? It's Filthy and we're back with another video. We're on the main account today. I normally do these off the free-to-play, but I've just got this one logged in right now. We're going to go over the Sacred Order rares. There are a lot of them. We're going to rank them. I'm going to tell you which ones I think are complete trash and you can feed immediately as 3-star chickens, or level them up as food and then feed them later. I'm going to tell you which ones I think are decent to take to 40, maybe 50, so for very early game dungeon progression, mid-game dungeon progression, or potentially hanging on for faction wars because they're worth it for faction wars, and then which ones, if any, we think are worthy of the 6 stars and 60ing. So we will go through it. If you have been enjoying this series, we're going to go through all the factions. This is number 3, we're going to get them all done. Thumbs up is always appreciated, comments are useful, but yeah, subscribe if you're interested in Raid. Free to play is pretty much what I do for the videos. There might be some non-free to play stuff at some point, but at the moment we're just doing the free to play account because it's a lot of fun starting the game again. Right, let's start with Athel. She is a starter champion. She is magic affinity, rare attack type. She has a triple hit A1, which is really great for Fire Knight progression because the 3 hits will help bring the shield down. She has a 75% chance of placing the big weaken, which is obviously good. Books up to 100% chance if you do put the books in, but 75% is high anyway, even without the books. We have the nuke on the A2, extra 15% chance of inflicting crit. So if you want to use her as an arena nuker, you only have to build her with 85% crit rate. She will also do a small version of increased attack on herself for 2 turns. If she also has less than 50% HP, she will put the increased defense small version 30% upon herself, and then she'll get an extra turn. So she'll always buff herself up, attack, and then do the nuke in arena if that's what you're going to use her for. So it's kind of a little bit like having this on a 4-turn cooldown already, and you can book it and it goes down to 3 turns. So, and it's for 2 turns. So you know, she's pumping herself up either with a little bit of extra damage or some extra toughness. And she of course has the 15% HP in all battles. The stats are 13.5k HP, which is okay-ish, getting on for okay. Defense 936 is alright. Attack of just under 1200 is decent for damage. Speed 104 is nice, we like that. And a little bit of extra crit damage, 15% crit rate. She, in my opinion, is the second best starter champion. Kale is better because of the poison. I'd say at the moment in the game with Rhonda, so if you've been playing this game recently in the last few months, you've probably got Rhonda as a free login legendary. She also has a triple hit A1, which incidentally can be a 4-hit A1, so that pretty much negates a lot of Athel's use for me. If you don't have access to any other multi-hitters, then I think her value goes up a lot. Weaken is quite a nice debuff for Clan Boss. Aside from that, I don't really think her kit's great for Clan Boss. Do you want to use her as an arena nuker? You certainly could do. You're probably looking for that role to be filled by an epic champion. So if we got her on the free to play, I would definitely build her to 50 because faction wars, she's going to be really good. She might well make it to 60 just simply on that basis because as we're going to go through the Sacred Order, there's a few questionable rares on the list, but ultimately I think if you've got a triple hit A1, I would be a little reluctant to 60 her because what she does is weaken. You'll be able to find another champion with that. She does an AoE nuke. Well, if you didn't pick her as your starter, you're going to have at least another starter who can AoE nuke. There's plenty of epics who can AoE nuke, and then she just basically self-buffs herself. So I don't really think just on the basis of damage she's worth it. So it depends on your account. If you do need the triple hit, then you can take it to 60, but I personally would park her at 50 and then see where you go. Later on in the game, sure, secret rooms, faction wars possibly. She, you know, I wouldn't ever feed her, I wouldn't get rid of her, I would be keeping her, but ultimately, you know, if I got her now, I wouldn't be 60ing her. She'd be on a list of potential champs to 60, but there would be others ahead of her. Witness, rare supports champion, attacks one enemy, 15% chance of placing an extra hit. That is absolute crap. A2, attacks one enemy, places 30% increased defense buff on an ally with the lowest HP for 3 turns. Again, I think that's crap. I mean, sure, a little bit of defense on whoever's got the lowest HP makes a bit of sense. It's for 3 turns. You could get it down to a 3-turn cooldown, so that increased defense will be on most of the time. But it's only on one champion, so if your team gets hit with an AoE, it doesn't really do you very much. Then she will place block debuffs on all allies for 2 turns, places a shield equal to 30% of her HP on everybody for 2 turns, 6-turn cooldown unbooked, get it down to a 4-turn cooldown with books. Block debuffs you can get in the campaign, Spirit Host is farmable, so that covers that. The shield, block debuffs and shield is a nice move. I probably wouldn't say it's worthwhile building her. Like, she's definitely not a 60, absolutely no question. But is it worth building her to 40 for this? I'm not so sure. She's also got res on an aura, so ally resistance 30 for faction crypts. So her stats, HP is getting up for decent, just under 15,000. We've got attack of 1100. We don't really care about that. You're never going to build her for damage, I don't think. Defense a little bit low at 900, and speed is decent at 103. I'd say for faction wars, you could certainly take her to 40. I don't think there's anything wrong with just deciding that this girl is a chicken. If, let's say, you've got anybody else who's providing a shield, or you have a champ in a shield set with decent HP to get through waves, I'd say the second part of this move becomes quite redundant, and block debuffs for 1 turn on a 6-turn cooldown is not really very good either, and say it's a waste of rare books. So you could do it to 40 for faction wars, but I'd be really reluctant to 50 her, I'd be really reluctant to 60 her, and I think ultimately if I got one on my free to play, I would probably just chicken her straight away. Hospitaller, another rare magic support. A1, attacks one enemy, terrible, does nothing. She has an AoE on her A2. It has a 50% chance of removing a buff from each target, so it's a mini little strip, 50% chance, and then it'll strip 1 buff. You could get the chance up to 75% to strip 1 buff, so that is potentially useful because it's an AoE hit and it strips a buff, so if you put her in a stun set, you could also get some stuns out, as well as taking off a random buff from all the targets. She does the small version of increased speed and increased crit rate on everybody for 2 turns. Does book down to a 3-turn cooldown. Again, I'd be reluctant to put rare books into her because I just don't think she's great. And she's got a passive which will revive a random ally with 25% HP, put block damage on them for 1 turn. But it only happens whenever Harrier kills an enemy, and Harrier is a trash champion, so you're never going to build him. Unfortunately, I mean, if this didn't have Harrier on it, if it was just whenever an enemy was killed, she'd be really good, but unfortunately it isn't. She does also have a 10% speed aura in all battles, so realistically, let's do stats first. HP is good, 17,000. Attack, don't care about. Defense is low at 848, and speed is okay at 101. For faction wars, again, similar to the last champ, you could certainly 40 her, I think. Maybe 50 her, because you'd be giving increased speed to everybody, increased crit rate to everybody for a couple of turns. Both of those, whilst they're the small version, they're useful buffs. The AoE with a stun set could be nice. You could take a random buff off. But ultimately, again, if you find yourself fairly stacked for Sacred Order champs, there's nothing wrong with chickening her and just using her as a chicken straight away. I'd be really reluctant to 50 her, I think, because she's not great. You'd have to have appalling RNG on Sacred Order and really need the progression for faction wars. So again, not a great champ in my opinion. Purgator, attack-based champion, attacks one enemy 2 times, will ignore shields. Fairly niche, you're probably not going to get much use out of this, but it does ignore a shield, I guess, and it is a double hit A1, which is always a little bit better than a 1-hitter. AoE on the A2 inflicts 10% extra crit damage for each debuff on this champion, stacks up to 50%, so he can give himself extra 50% crit damage. I think this is a fairly hard-hitting move, but ultimately rare champions for damage dealers, I think, is something you want to avoid long term. Again, it's an AoE, booked on a 4-turn cooldown, does book down to 3, so could be another candidate for a stun set. And then he attacks one enemy on his A3, 5-turn cooldown. It does destroy the max HP of the target by 20% of the damage inflicted. This sometimes is useful for bosses, sometimes in the faction wars. I can't remember if it's the case for Sacred Order. There's somebody who does a health swap, so destroying their HP is handy. But let's face it, you can get that from gear. There's a destroy set in the game, so I'd say it's quite a redundant move. HP fairly low, 13,500. That's okay, actually, it's not too bad. Attack is very high at 1400, defense is very low at 700, and speed's not great at 94. So really, would you build him for damage? I'd rather have Athel, I think, for damage, because her kit has also got some other utility, and I probably would just chicken this guy. I don't think you want to be getting into building rares up to 50 to do damage. I just don't think it makes any sense, and I don't think his kit's good enough to 60. It's too big an investment, so feel free to chicken that guy if you want. Castigator, rare HP champion. A1 attacks one enemy, 25% chance of placing provoke for 1 turn. I think that's a decent A1. 1 in 4 times it's going to provoke. You can get it up to 40% with some books, so that's not bad. 40% provoke at A1. That does have some usefulness. Not really a high enough chance to be usable, very consistently, but it would do okay for an A1. His A2 heals the lowest ally by 20% of his HP, so that can be a very big heal if you build him with good HP. Then he does an equalize of all allies and grants himself an extra turn. Equalize is a powerful heal in of itself because it'll just kind of top everybody up and level out everyone's HP. You can book this down to a 4-turn cooldown. 6 turns is a bit rubbish to start him off, but it's not many books really to get that up if you wanted. And then he gets 15% less damage for enemies under provoke, so that's kind of handy because he lands the provoke, they do 15% less damage. Stats wise, HP of just under 19,000 is very nice. Defense 900 is a little bit low. Speed is 95, which isn't great. He starts with a little higher resistance of 40. But all his damage is based on HP, and obviously this is the only kind of attack that he's got. I think he's okay. Again, 40, maybe a 50. I probably wouldn't want to rely on him as a healer. I think there are better healers in the game, but he does also have a decent little bit of crowd control. He's better than Warpriest, 100%. It was the free healer that you get. Maybe for faction wars you could 50 the guy and he could be your healer. You'd probably want to put books in him. If you do, rare books are hard to come by initially, so it's all very back burner stuff. So I probably wouldn't chicken him. I think for faction wars he's going to be worth hanging on to, and if you wanted a healer from the Magic Affinity faction, he doesn't take many books and has a little bit of crowd control, has got decent stats. I'd be a little reluctant to 50 him. I'd consider it, and I'd be quite reluctant to do him to 60. Okay, Chaplain rare support. We've got an A1, attacks one enemy, awful. Her A2 removes all debuffs from an ally target and then heals the target. So it is a cleanse, but only for 1 unit, and then only heals that 1 unit. The heal is proportionate to her attack. That makes no sense. Why would you build your support champion with a really high attack? And then she's got an AoE, heals by the damage inflicted. So I guess the theory with this is you pump her up to do damage. The more damage she does, she heals. This does go down to a 4-turn cooldown. You'd have to build her for damage for this heal to be particularly effective. I just don't think that makes any sense. I think she's kind of crappy and I'd chicken her. Her stats, incidentally, are just under 16k HP, 1000 attack, which is okay, defense just under 900, speed of 102. I would always chicken this champion. I don't think she's worth it. We've just looked at the last guy. I think he's a better healer. Lamellar, another HP champion, A1, attacks one enemy, 10% chance of placing the small version of decreased defense, so 30% decreased defense for 2 turns, based on HP, which is kind of nice. Then on his A2, he's got an AoE, so it attacks everybody, places decreased attack for 2 turns, based on HP, can book down to 3-turn cooldown. Small version of decreased attack, but it's not like a chance, it's always going to go on, subject to your accuracy. And then he has a passive, decrease the damage taken by this champion by 30% when his HP drops below 30. and he has an HP faction crypt aura of 22%. Stats wise, HP quite high, just under 20,000. Defense is not great at just under 900. Speed pretty slow at 93, and a little bit of extra resist at 40. So what would I do with this guy? I'd be reluctant to do anything with him other than faction wars. I mean, clan boss, very early clan boss, you don't have decreased attack, so if you're brand new to the game, he's worth taking to 40 just to use him very early clan boss. AoE decreased attack, force affinity. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to take this guy to 50, but I don't think he's a particularly great champion either, so he'd be kind of a little bit of a last resort. He does have decreased defense on his A1, he's got decreased attack on his A2. They're both the small versions. I'd say I'd be a little reluctant to 50 him, but at a push I'd consider it, and I probably wouldn't 60 him. And again, similarly, if you decide you've got decreased defense covered, big version from somebody, if you've got decreased attack version covered from somebody, then you need to build this guy as a lot less. If you think about it, you do get the big version of decreased defense for the same force affinity from Warmaiden through the campaign, so that makes this a lot less useful. But for faction wars, he could be an okay champ. Solaris, A1, attacks one enemy, 30% chance of removing one random buff, so you can book it up to 40% chance, just takes one buff off. That's okay for the keeps, so magic keep, he is the wrong affinity for the spirit keep. Again, there is a full stop here, so I don't know whether weak hits would mean that that doesn't do the buff strip, but it's an okay A1. 30-40% chance to remove a buff is alright. His A2 attacks one enemy, places a shield on himself for 20% of the damage inflicted. Really rubbish move, don't really care about that. And his A3 attacks one enemy, 75% chance of a stun for one turn. High chance, you can book it up to 100% chance, so a single move to take out one enemy. Stun is nice, but it's only one enemy. You'd have to book it for it to be consistent. It's on a 5-turn cooldown, does come down to 4. Overall, I just don't really like this kit at all. I would probably just chicken this guy. I don't really see that he's worthwhile. You'd have to really be struggling for buff strip, I think, and we can all get Conqueror from the campaign, who does this move better, because I think his chance is 50%, and it's 2 buffs, not 1, so ultimately I'd avoid him, I think, for that reason. HP 13,500 is okay, attack is very high at 1200, defense is a little low at just under 900, and he's really slow at 92, so overall I would just chicken that guy. Then we've got Renouncer, another rare attack, force affinity, double hit A1, pretty rubbish because nothing else comes with it, but 2 hits is better than 1. Then his A2 removes 1 random debuff from this champion, then attacks 1 enemy, heals him by 25% of the damage inflicted. I don't like these moves where it just does that one champion, so again I'd say that's pretty rubbish. He'll take a debuff off himself every 3rd turn, then attack and do a dribbly little heal on himself. I think that's pants. And then his A3 attacks 1 enemy, places the small version of increased speed on all allies for 2 turns, but only if he kills somebody. That's dreadful. So this guy is a complete chicken. His kit is just awful. HP just under 13,000. Attack is high at 1200. Defense 900. Speed 97. No reason ever to do anything with that guy other than feed him. Templar, this is a free champion from the campaign. You can get him from farming the Valdemar Strait, which is the lifesteal gear set campaign. I like him. I've 60'd him. I think he's a really underrated champion. I've 60'd him on my main account, got another at 50, which I might 60 just for the lols. His kit is really good actually. He attacks 1 enemy. He has a 30% chance of placing the big version of decreased speed for 2 turns. Damage based on defense. You can make him tanky and do a little bit of damage with the defense. I like big version of decreased speed. It does go up to 50%, so half of the time he hits with his A1, subject to accuracy, subject to affinity, big version of decreased speed. That's nice. His A2 has got a 4-time hitter. It has a 25% chance of placing provoke for 1 turn. Now bear in mind, it's not going to hit 4 different enemies all the time. You will get recurrent hits some of the time. But it does also place block damage on him for 1 turn. again based on defense. Really annoying and irritating move this if you come across him early in arena or tag arena. Just plops provoke on your champions, block damage, and then obviously as he gets hit, the next part of his kit is that whenever he gets debuffed, he will counter attack with his A1. And so obviously, you know, the theory is he puts block damage on himself for a turn, counters with his A1 whenever he gets debuffed, places the big version of decreased speed. The provoke chance does go up to 50% for each hit, which is not bad. It's on a 3-turn cooldown, so you can build him with a bit of speed, a bit of defense, and he can actually chip away with some damage. I think for Fire Knight, he's an interesting champion because he's only got 2 skills. So one of them is a 4-time hitter, which is great for the shield. You can get it down to a 3-turn cooldown. You could put him in a reflex set and try and get this ability back faster. Decreased speed for Fire Knight is really handy. It's kind of okay for Spider. Anything where you're looking to put decreased speed on a boss, he's good. Potentially the Iron Twins, I think, is a place he could be used as an early character. His stats are just under 16k HP, which is decent. Attack, don't care about. Defense over 1000 is nice. He is slow at 92, which is unfortunate. But he also has ally resistant arena by 50. So again, he's a good candidate for somebody on a tag team arena. So overall, I really like him. You can book him out for free by farming extra copies. He's going to be cheap to ascend, and I quite like his kit. So I'd say he's definitely a 50. And for a crowd control enemy, provoke and then decrease speed, I think he's okay. Like on the free to play, we've got him, we've got Greybeard as our only crowd control options at the moment. I certainly will take him to 50, I think, unless we pull somebody better. And I don't think he's the worst shout in the world for a 60, because big version of decreased speed on an A1 is nice. Multi-hit, block damage, provoke is nice. His counter-attack passive is nice as well. So I'm not saying you should 60 him, I'm not saying he's a must build, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to have a 60 of this guy. And I certainly, whenever starting a new free-to-play account, look to get one of these guys up to 50. Next we have Penitent. She is a rare defense spirit based as well. Attack one enemy 2 times, 30% chance of the small decreased attack. You can buff it up to 50% chance of the small decreased attack. For an A1, that's pretty good. You double hit better than a single hit, and then decreased attack is always nice. Useful for early game clan boss, useful for any bosses really. A2 attacks one enemy, places counter attack on herself for 1 turn, so that's not bad. It does book down to 2 turns, and then when you're counter attacking, you're hopefully landing your decreased attack. And then she has a self cleanse and block debuffs on herself for 3 turns, books down to 2 turns. So she's okay. I think she's used in the Raz infusion, so you're going to need a copy of her anyway. Her stats are just under 15k HP. Really high defense at 1200, very high for a rare, not fast at 93. The kit, I think, is okay. If you need decreased attack, I don't think there's anything wrong with building her up to 40, maybe even 50 for that purpose, and you can chicken her later. For faction wars, her kit is basically just the decreased attack, so she's only really going to be useful on boss stages if you're wanting to get decreased attack down. So it depends. If you've got a champ who already does decreased attack, I'd save 1 copy of her for Razin, and I would basically chicken the rest. If you do need the decreased attack, then by all means 40 her. I would be reluctant to 50 her because it's a small version and she's not really useful for anything else other than placing the decreased attack. The rest of the kit's not great. But if you absolutely have to in a push, you could 50 her, again with a view to chickening her at a later date. So not good, but okay. Warpriest, we've done an entire dedicated video on why this champion is not good, so I do not like her. Her stats are really nice. She's got 18k HP, she's got 1100 defense, they're both really good. You don't care about her attack because she's a support based champion. Speed is alright at 97. She's got a small little bit of crowd control on her A1, 15% chance freeze debuff for 1 turn. I would never book her, but if you did, you could get that up to 25%. Her heal, I think, is rubbish. It heals the target ally by 20% of their max HP, then heals all allies except the target by 10% of the original target's HP. So sometimes this can not be a big heal at all. It does book down to 3-turn cooldown. and she does increased attack on everybody for 2 turns. Only benefits attack-based champions, and other than in arena for nuking, I think in general it's quite a poor team buff because most of your champs, it's easier to build HP and defense champs at the start of the game. So I don't like her. I would take her to 40 if she was my only healer. You could take it to 50 if you get bad pulls and you're really relying on this as your only source of healing, but ultimately she's just a chicken, and as soon as you get a better healer you're looking to replace her. So I tend to feed her pretty early. As soon as I get anybody else who can do healing, I replace her. Judicator, rare attack based spirit affinity champion. A1, attacks one enemy, has 20% chance of decreasing turn meter by 15%. Turn meter decrease is always nice on an A1. Low chance of 20%, low amount of turn meter, so it, in theory it sounds good, but I think in practice it's quite poor. A2, attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing the small decreased defense for 2 turns. Books out to 75%. It's only one enemy, so if, again, compare it to Warmaiden in the campaign, she'll do the big version on everybody. She's force affinity, but it is AoE. And his A3 attacks one enemy. Woohoo! We get 30% extra crit damage. No, this guy's not good, I don't think. His HP is fairly low at just under 12,000, sorry. Attack is very high at 1400. So, theoretically, you could build him up and he might hit hard, but why do you want a single hard-hitting Spirit Affinity champion? I don't know. You don't. Defense 837 is a little bit low. Speed is quite nice at 104. I would probably just chicken this guy. I don't think he's worth it for Faction Wars, particularly when you can get Templar for free. Maiden, another Spirit Affinity attack champion, attacks one enemy with her A1, has a 25% chance of freeze debuff, so kind of like a booked out Warpriest, I guess, so it's okay. It's a little bit of crowd control, but nothing amazing. A2 attacks one enemy, destroys the HP by 25%. Again, not a very good move because destroy HP can be obtained through gear. And then attacks one enemy on the A3, places a 30% decreased defense for 2 turns, and places the decreased defense on all enemies if she crits. So actually this is not bad. It's the small version of decreased defense, not the big version. But if you build with 100% crit rate, you could get that book down to a 4-turn cooldown. Spirit Affinity is not bad to pick up decreased defense in general, because again, Warmaiden will do it for you, but she's Force, so having Spirit and Force, 2 different affinities for decreased defense, could be okay. Stats, HP terrible, 11,700. Attack decent, well, really good actually, 1,300. Defense a little bit low, 900. Speed absolutely pitiful at 87. You could do her to 40 or 50 for Faction Wars, because decreased defense will speed up your runs. You could do her for early dungeon progression at 40 or 50, because decreased defense will help you out. You've got to build her with high crit rate though. She's got shit speed, and she's going to be really hard to keep alive because the stats aren't good. So I would be really reluctant to take this girl past 40, but I guess if you're really struggling for decreased defense on Spirit Affinity, you could consider 50ing her, but I think you're probably better off relying on Warmaiden and trying to find yourself a better champion. So again, absolutely no harm if you just straight up chicken this girl as soon as you get her. Mother Superior, she is named this because she is superior to Warpriest in healing. She has got a A1 that does a 35% chance of the decreased attack for 2 turns, small version at 25%, but not a bad A1, 35% chance, roughly 1 in 3. That could have some use. Early clan boss it can have use, all the other reasons for decreased attack that we've talked about previously in the video. You'll heal an ally by 30% of her HP, so it can potentially be a big heal, pump her HP up. She then places a shield for any surplus heal for 2 turns on the target if it's a fully heal. So even if she fully heals somebody and they're only missing a small amount of HP, they then get a shield. Can go down to a 3-turn cooldown, so I think again a better heal than a Warpriest. She'll also do the small version of continuous heal on everybody for 2 turns on her A3, places a shield buff equal to 10% of the target's HP on anyone who's got full HP. So you're either getting a heal if you're not full, or you're getting a shield. 5-turn cooldown, small version of continuous heal, does book down to 4. She also has a speed aura in 13%, so all battles. So can be useful for tag arena, could be useful for arena very early on. I think she's a 40. I think there's an argument you could take it to 50 as your healer to start off with. Long term wise, you probably want a better champ, but decreased attack on the A1 is nice. Continuous heal, shield. I think there's a lot to like about this champion. She's got HP of 16,000. She's got defense of 950 and speed of 103. So stats are all decent. They're all okay. And yeah, if we got one of these early, I think you could certainly 40 her. You could certainly 50 her. Would you 60 her? Well, probably not. But again, you could do if you've got nobody else doing healing for you. And you've got nobody else doing decreased attack. It's not the worst thing in the world. But you know, long term wise, you want the big version of decreased attack, and you do want a better heal probably than this. But I think she's a decent champ, and I don't think there's anything wrong with certainly 50ing her. And depending on where your account is, she could be a 6-star healer, particularly for the spirit affinity. So I think she's a decent champ. I quite like that one. Headsman, rare attack champion. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Has a 10% chance of placing fear for 2 turns. Rubbish chance. Fear's a nice debuff. Just basically skip a go. 2 hits better than 1, but nothing really special on that A1. A2 attacks all enemies. 30% chance of placing 100% heal reduction. You could book it up to 50%. AoE on a 3-turn cooldown. Could be a candidate for a stun set. Again, adding a little bit of utility. Heal reduction is usable in the Spirit Keep and Fire Knight, but again, you can get a set that does it, albeit it's the small version on the set, so not amazing. And he does 15% more damage to enemies under heal reduction buffs. Who cares? His HP is awful at just under 11,000. Attack is high at 1,300. Defense 950 and speed is dead 100. I think this guy's a chicken. I would probably never ever build him. Ever. Sanctum Protector. This is a guy who I've had on previous playthroughs on free to play. I think he's kind of decent. He's defense based. His A1 has a very small chance of doing a stun, so a little bit of crowd control, but 1 in 6 times if you don't book him. Stun, you know, it's better than nothing. It's not brilliant, but what he does is he does an AoE attack, and then he puts increased defense on everybody for 2 turns. It does book down to 3-turn cooldown, so again, you could stick him in the stun set. You'd be getting then 2 chances to stun on his A1, get an AoE chance to stun of 18%. Then you get the small version of increased defense. It rolls back round after 3 turns if you booked him. His A3 attacks one enemy, 70% chance of placing provoke, books up to 100. So again, you could, if you had him in the stun set and you didn't book him, you'd have a 70% chance of provoke or an 18% chance of a stun based on defense. If you did book it, it will definitely provoke somebody subject to accuracy. Stats, 15k HP, 1200 defense is high, speed 97. I think he's an okay champion for crowd control and for making your team tougher. I think there's definitely 40 early on. You could 50 him. I think I have 50'd him in the past, even though it's not the big version of increased defense, because it's got the AoE, because he's got the stun, because he's got the provoke. He's like kind of doing 2 roles in a team. He's doing crowd control, and he's also making your team able to take more hits. So I think his kit actually is decent. His defense is high, so he's not too bad to keep alive. So you can certainly 50 him. If you've got somebody else doing increased defense, then the need to have him is lower. But as a crowd control champ, he's pretty good. The issue you've got really is that I'm saying Templar is a good crowd control champion as well. They're both spirit affinity, so bear that in mind. But those two as a combo, increased defense from Sanctum Protector, makes your Templar do more damage, and those two can do a pretty good job of locking teams up. Obviously they would be weak against magic affinity. Now we come to the void rares. Confessor attacks one enemy, 15% chance of decreasing turn meter by 15%. As before, small chance, small amount of turn meter, better than nothing I suppose, but not good by any means. She has an AoE on her A2, decreased accuracy, 70% chance of landing that, and it does buck up to 100%. AoE, so potential candidate for a stun set, could buck down to a 3-turn cooldown. Decreased accuracy is not really very useful early in the game at all, but it is something you might want to consider having a copy of somebody doing this on your account, and with it being void, you know you're not going to have weak affinity problems. A3, attacks one enemy, terrible. 35% chance of granting an extra turn, pretty terrible, awful A3. And then she has crit rate, dungeon aura, 16%. You're unlikely to ever use it. Her stats, HP is pretty low at 1200, attack nice and high at 1400, defense a little low at 800, and speed 98. So you're probably going to have issues keeping her alive, and all that she does really is an AoE with decreased accuracy. So is she good enough to build with a stun set on for this? I don't think so. You could save her if you wanted, just for the decreased accuracy, because you might need that at some point later in the game. But as soon as you get anybody else who does decreased accuracy, I think she turns pretty much into an extra chicken, because the A1's not very good, the A3 is not very good, the aura's not particularly usable, and she's going to be really squishy. So if you want decreased accuracy, keep her, maybe 40. But other than that, I think she's a chicken. I tend to chicken her when I get her. I always used to think this said Justiciar, as in he's just a car, but it's not, it's Justiciar, I think. Defense base, you have to fuse this guy for the Arbiter missions. You have to fuse him for, what's the guy called? Relic Keeper. He's a terrible champion. Attacks one enemy, increases his defense by 3% each round, up to 10 times, so up to 30% increased defense. That's okay. It's a little bit like having the increased defense on him. Interestingly, you can build him with attack or defense for damage. Both of them are there. You obviously would pick defense because that makes him tougher. Attacks one enemy, 50% chance of placing provoke for 1 turn. Bucks up to 75%, again based on both defense and attack. You would go for defense. And then his passive, when his champ is hit with a critical hit, counterattacks using his default skill and decreases the buff duration on the target by 1 turn. That's an okay move. It would be nice if his A1 did something more than just pump his own defense up, but buff strip counterattack is okay. Faction crypt aura, defense 19%. Looking at his stats, nearly 15,000 HP is okay. 1100 defense is nice. Pump that up by 30% as your fight goes on if he stays alive. Speed is low at 93. Would you build this guy? I don't think so. I don't think his kit's good enough. A 50% chance to provoke 1 enemy is really not useful for crowd control. Buff strip on a counterattack, I don't think is great. There are other buff strip options. As we said, Conqueror from the Bannerlords will do a buff strip. Obviously not on an A1. And he has to be crit, which if you think about PvE, you generally are facing a 15% chance to be crit, so it's not going to go off very often. So I think he's not particularly good. I probably wouldn't even bother building him for Faction Wars. You could do if you're struggling, because he's always fusible. So theoretically, if you really wanted to fuse him over and over again, you could do and book him out. I wouldn't. I think that's a waste of time. So I'd say 40 if you're really struggling for Faction Wars, and then maybe chicken him after that. Harrier is not very good. Attacks one enemy, 15% chance of extra hit. Don't like that at all. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Low chance of 30% of placing the smaller version of decreased defense for 2 turns. I don't like that. I wouldn't book him. He's a waste of space. A3, attacks one enemy, 30% extra chance of critting. That's not very good. Passive will ignore 50% of the defense when this champ inflicts crit, only when Hospitaller is on the same team. Now, ignoring 50% of defense is a bit of a big deal, but to get any value out of this, you're really going to have to invest in this champion. So you're talking like 50 minimum, and probably 60, and you're going to have to take Hospitaller everywhere with you. So all in all, I just avoid him. I've never built one. I don't ever intend to build one. HP 13.5k is alright. Attack fairly high, just under 1400. Defense is garbage at 750, so you can be dead hard to keep alive. Speed 96 is slow as well. So ultimately, I just chicken that guy. Draconis, HP champion, void, attacks one enemy, heals the lowest ally, 7.5% of the damage inflicted. That's okay for an A1. You're chipping away, increasing somebody's HP. Places a shield on all allies equal to 15% of his HP for 2 turns. Bucks down to 3 turn cooldown. That's nice. That can be a good shield. AoE shield is a good move. 15% of his HP. Pump his HP as high as you can to make the shield bigger. Attacks one enemy on his A3. Removes all debuffs from the ally with the lowest HP. Then heals them by 25%. So whoever's got the lowest HP, if they've got debuffs, he cleanses them. And then he gives them a little bit of a heal. Bucks down to a 4 turn cooldown. His HP is just under 18,000, which is high for a rare. Defense 925 is a little bit low, but it's okay. And speed is decent at 100. AoE shield for 2 turns on a 3 turn cooldown can be useful. Obviously, if you have anybody else providing shields, or again, let's say you've built a high HP champion in a shield set, then this move, I think, becomes less valuable. His AoE healing somebody is alright, and then he's got, again, he'll take buffs, but this is a little bit random. I would 40 him, I think, probably, for the shield. If it was something I was missing, I'd consider 50ing him for faction wars again for shields if I felt like it was needed. But ultimately, I think you're probably better off just putting a champ in a shield set to cover this at the start of 2 waves. And then the healing's a little bit random, so I don't think he's great. I'd be a little bit reluctant to 50 him, but you could do, I guess, if you wanted. His stats are okay for HP, and he's void, so you can take him kind of everywhere. So that's it, really. Sacred Order. I think this is one of the worst factions for rares. Straight up, there's nobody here who I think we've covered who you'd say is an absolute must 60. I think your best champion is probably Athel. But again, if you've got other people that do a kit, it's a bit of a waste of time. Templar we like. Sanctum Protector we like. Draconis is okay. Mother Superior we like. Castigator can be okay. And then the rest of them I think are pretty pants. Fortunately, there's quite a few uncommons. Notably, you've got Armiger. Decreased turn meter if he crits on his A1. Block enemy revive on his A2. Both based on defense. It does max HP hit as well. If you're a new player, you should be working towards getting one of these guys at 50. I had 2 at 60 for ages. I still use them now on Fire Knight because I just can't be bothered re-gearing a team. Outlaw Monk does poisons. Not a brilliant champion, but it can chip away with a little bit of damage. You've got Crusader who does the ally attack, so brings an ally in for an attack. So ultimately, there's so many champions here, but there's very few. If you think about it, you're going to end up with a couple of Armigers at 60. You can get yourself a Justiciar if you want. You can get yourself Templars, and then everybody has to do, where is he? Relic Keeper. Again, I don't think this is a great champ, but he will get you by in faction wars to start off with. So honestly, it's a bit of a hard faction. A lot of the epics are decent. Deacon's really good. Godseeker, Shemael, Lightsworn. The Voids are all really good. Lodric's really good. Mordecai's really good. Venax is decent. Romero is decent. Sanguine is decent. There's quite a few decent epics, so I'd probably be reluctant to be investing terribly much in any of these rares. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the guide. I hope it was useful. I've been the Filthy Casual. I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy, guys. Peace.